I'll let you know as soon as I open my Gemara.
Yes, sir, I'm doing Today is Chaf.
Today is Chaf, correct. Right, today is Chaf. It's the 18th. See, I got to do things in order to remember. You know, when you get old, that's what happens, right? Okay, learning sponsors. Isaac, the year of learning, Isaac and Evelyn Blachler in memory of his sister. Chaya Rachel Bas Isser, friends of Leonie Meiselman, Leah Sabra Bas Chanuch Zundel. Friends of Meliskotsky, Moshe Zelig ben Mordechai, Martin Lipman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pinchas. Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi ben Zev. Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel ben Yaakov. Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo ben Meir. A month of learning by the friends and students of Rabbi Shalom Kornblum, Rav Shalom ben Mordechai. Haran and Mel Haller in memory of her father, Yosef Eliezer ben Tzvi Hirsch. Mark Scher in memory of his father, Mordechai ben Menachem Manus. Mark Linder in memory of his nephew, Eretz Paul ben Sulis. Susan and Paul Ronald Dolsky, right? In memory of her father, Simcha Buna ben Yeshua. Michael and Judith Koretsky in memory of his mother, Rachel Bas Avram. A week of learning by Judy Iger in memory of her husband, Aaron ben Shlomo Michael, and by Judy Iger in memory of her son, Anshel Yitzchak ben Aharon. Today being the 18th, okay, Judy and Bob Thaler in memory of her father, Moshe Bendit ben Avraham Yitzchak. And Hashem is having a Leah, crank Rafiel about the Yeshua Shematulia, and Lachol Ben Israel, a good Gaben Shkia. Okay. All right. So, given that it's the 18th, we are on Kaf Amud Aleph, right? However, just to go back a drop to catch us all up, right? Okay.
It says he puts his hand underneath our hand. Doesn't necessarily mean that he's touching my hands. I can put it underneath her, and you wouldn't know the difference whether I'm holding it or not holding our hand. I'm leaving here. Let's go. He says it places him.
What? No.
Who says he's started yesterday?
Okay, that was yesterday's discussion, guys. Okay? Actually, how come you switched chairs? Okay, all right. Oh, that's okay. There was some song that some hands touching hands, right? Okay, right? Okay, so I just want to go back real quick. All right, so we had this whole discussion. We said even though that was an issue that was presented in the Mefarshim, okay, the real concern we saw in the Gemara in its discussion was which came first, okay, the Korban Mincha or the drinking. And that's what was the extensive discussion, okay? And on the bottom then of Yud Tet Amud Beis, okay, all right, where we said, right, basically there was a statement there. I just want to go through real quick. Okay, where they talked about, remember, whether it was out of fear that she didn't want to drink or whether she was healthy. Right, Vahachi Kamar. This is what they really said. Kol mechamat briuta, when it's regarding a situation that she was well, klal in general. Klal, there's a principle. Lo shataya. If she says she doesn't drink, mechamat ritita. If it's because of fear, ad shelo karev hakometz. That's when it was before they offered the mincha. Da akati lo amchok megillah. It's because it was before they did any erasure on the scroll. Inami amchik Megillah, or if they had erased the Megillah, the shalo kadin avid kohanim demach, where the kohanim did not do it in the appropriate manner. appropriate order, right? All right, Matse Hadraba, that she can recant. Mishakarev Hakometz, a last line then on Yud Tet, okay, on the very bottom of Yud Tet Amud Beis, once they have offered the mincha offering, all right, the badin avid kohanim demach, okay, that the kohanim then carried out the erasure in the appropriate time and manner, right? Lo matze hadraba, we say she is not able to retract, okay? Right? So remember, by the way, we also threw in a Rabbi Akiva. So let's see what's going to happen. So on the top of Kaf Amud Aleph, which is today's daf, we'll go through as much as we can because it's a long stuff. Kasha Rabbi Akiva ad the Rabbi Akiva. So it seems to be that we have a problem with what Rabbi Akiva says in the first brisa and in the second brisa. Okay, what happens? Hatam there amar mechika ma'akva. And the Earl first, right? He said that the erasure was one of the things that was ma'akev, that would defer or ruin the whole sota examination. Vahacha amar kometz ma'akev. And here he says that it is the offering of the mincha offering, the kmitza, right? By the way, I just want to quickly point out what we saw in the Gemara was that it said actually three things were ma'akev. Both of these were mentioned, okay? However, what happens? So the Gemara says, Trei Tanai v'liba the Rabbi Akiva. You have two different Tanaim that each had their own Masorah from Rabbi Akiva. That's why I wanted to point out earlier, if the Gemara had pointed out that there were three things, it's understandable that one would say it's the kamitza, one would say it's the mechika. Why? Because the question is, again, coming back to what Rabbi Yehuda said there, his point was lechat chila and b'di even. Okay? All right, so what happens? Ibayalahu. So now we go on, third line and Kaf Amud Aleph. So they ask, Amra, Eini Shota, when she says, I will not drink, Mechamat Briyuta, if she is in a healthy or strong status, V'chazra v'amra, and then she comes back and she says, Shote ani, I will drink. Okay? Mahu, what's the situation? Kevan da amra eini shota, since she's already said, I will not drink, Tameya anika amra, is it as if she is saying, admitting her guilt, right? Okay, and therefore she's admitting I'm guilty. Okay, v'kevan de'echzik nafsha betuma, and that therefore she is. I'm going to translate achzik here. She's maintaining her status of being tmeya. That's the case, and therefore admitting her guilt. Lo matzye hadraba, and therefore she can't recant. Right? Then she can't come back and say, no, I'm willing to drink. O dilma kevanda amra shotani, or do we say that since she afterwards says, I'm willing to drink, I will drink, okay? Galia da'ata, she's revealing the fact, right, that at this time, the michamat bi'ututa hi amra, that she's saying that because she was trembling. Okay, because she was, in other words, her outward composure was fake. Okay, and that she was really afraid. Right? What's the answer? Teku. Okay, we have no answer. Okay, okay. So, right now, let's go on. Amar Avuha de Shmuel. He's going to add an additional comment. Right? Tzrich sheyitain mar l'toch hamayim. He's telling us that the Kohen must put something bitter into the water before she drinks. The implication being that it's not the combination of the water and the earth and the ink that renders it bitter, okay? But it must be something in advance of that, okay? Perhaps in advance of their doing the erasure, okay? My Tama, what's the reasoning? The Amar Kra. Because the pasuk itself says, me hamarim, it's bitter water. Shmarim kvar, implying that they're already bitter. Okay, that the water was bitter before he gave it to her to drink, and not as a result of his mixing the three items together.
What do they put in there?
There's water, there's earth, and there's at least the ink. Okay.
So the earth makes it the bitter.
No. According to Abba Ben Shmuel, there's got to be something,
An herb or something.
something else in it. Okay, he doesn't spell it out. Could be an herb, could be who knows what. Okay. Okay.
Also says it's the circumstance.
Right.
Does it
No,
depend
it's
how long
bitter
it
because it
takes
causes
for
you
her
to die.
change her mind?
You know, I'm just going to come up with another item, which I didn't see with anywhere, but we're going to see. Remember, eventually the Gemara is going to tell us and deal with the question of what is the ink made from? And okay, if you have copper sulfate that it's put into the ink, and okay, because it has to be written b'dio, we saw, just like a Sefer Torah. Okay, and we're going to come to a piece of Agadita that refers to that. I don't know chemistry enough to say whether the copper sulfate would have an impact in the liquid. Okay, I'm just bringing that up because, as I say, we're going to get towards the bottom of the daf to a long discussion on that topic.
It says here, Rambam says that they put in a warm wood into the water.
Oh, okay. All right, that's a note from, okay,
Warm wood.
right? Okay. All right, Matnitin, our new Mishnah. Okay. Matnitin says as follows. Ad shalo nimchaka hamegillah amra eini shota. What happens if before they did the erasure, she says, I'm not prepared to drink, right? Right, what do? So Megilta, Nig Nezit. The Megillah then is put in Geniza. Okay. All right. Uminchata mitparezet al hadeshin. Okay, and it should be different. The discussion here should be really Beit Hadeshin. Okay, in the Lashon, because there's other the Tosefta has it that way. Okay, and because we're also going to see the word Beit Hadeshin later on. So the Beit Hadeshin, remember, was the place in the Azara, in the temple precinct, where the ash from the ash pile. And there were three of them, but we must be talking about the one closest to the Mizbeach. Okay? Going on. Ve'ein Megillata kshera lahashkod basota acher. And the Megillah written for that woman, all right, for Mrs. X, for example, cannot be used in a situation where we're examining Mrs. Y for infidelity. Okay, what happens? Nimchaka Megillah. What happens now if the Megillah, if the section was already erased, okay, and says I'm Tmeah? What happens then? Okay, Hamayim Nishpachim, the water is spilled out. Uminchata mitpazeret al Beit Hadeshin. And again, the mincha offering is all spread on the Beit Hadeshin, the ash pile. Okay, right? Nimchaka hamegillah v'amra ani shota. If they've erased the language on the Megillah, and then what happens? She says, "I am not prepared to drink." Ani shota ma'ararinota umashkinota ba'al korchem. We translate that as we coerce her and we force her to drink against her will. Okay? And now, the Gemara comes up with another interesting item. Einamas peket l'shtot ad shepaneha moriko. she doesn't drink enough. And then suddenly we see that her face turns green or sallow, right? Ve'eneha boltot, and her eyes start to bulge. Okay, so that means there's an immediate reaction to the drinking. Okay, so the Gemara ultimately is going to want to ask us, whose view is it that there would be an immediate reaction? Okay, it must be, I'm going to suggest in advance, the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, because he argued that you did the mincha first, then you gave her to drink, right? Because if it was the opposite way, if you gave her to drink and then, all right, then you did the mincha, how could the person say there was immediate reaction? Let's go on. All right, so her eyes start bulging out. Vehi mitmal'et gidin, her veins start to protrude. Vehem omrin, and hein, okay, behem, the other people, which would be, remember, since all this is carried out by the gates of Nicanor in the front of the women's Azara, okay, so it's primarily a lot of women that are going to say, all right, here, Hotziuha shalot titma ha'azara, take her out so she doesn't become tameh, okay, to tameh the entire area. There's a whole nother discussion and at least one or two notes there in Art Scroll as to how is it possible, okay, that area could become tameh, because if we compare it to the time of the Mishkan, this was the Azara of the women would be like the Levite camp, the second camp. And not only could you, have somebody tameh enter that camp, you could even have a mace in that camp. Okay, so we'll see that discussion eventually. Anyway, what happens? Im yesh la zechut, hayta tolala, says our Mishnah. If she has some merit, okay, there will not be an immediate reaction. Yesh zechut tola shana achat. There could be merit that would put the result in abeyance for a year. Yesh zechut tola ba shnei shanim. There could be a merit that puts it in abeyance for 2 years. Yesh zechut tola shlosha shanim. There could be a merit that puts it in abeyance for 3 years. Mikan, from here, Omer ben Azai, says Ben Azai, Chayav adam lelamed et bito Torah. Okay, that a person therefore is obligated. A man is obligated to teach his daughter Torah. Why? She'im tishteh teda shehazachut tolela. Because if she does drink, okay, she should know that the Torah study serves as a merit, okay, to put the punishment in abeyance. And here, when I prepared this, I thought to myself, hey, if she studied Torah, wouldn't she know not to be unfaithful whatsoever? Should she have to drink whatsoever? She really studied Torah, okay?
Could she become pregnant and have a baby during these 3 years?
Who knows?
If she does, it looks like.
If she does, then the zechut overcame the exam, right? And that would say she was innocent.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good point, Seth. Thank you. Okay. However, notice now the exact opposite view. What?
Did you drink something at that time? Then?
Right. So Zev's point, that's Zev's point. What happens if she drunk and and then shortly thereafter she had a baby? Wouldn't that prove, therefore, that she was innocent?
Yeah.
Okay. However, notice the exact different perspectives now. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Kol hamilamed bito Torah, ki'ilu lomda tiflut. Whoever teaches her Torah, says Rabbi Elazar, it's like he teaches her promiscuity, intimacy. Okay, so very strong, different attitudes. Okay, and that that continued all through even into Europe and into originally this country, where I remember somebody telling me that at Stern College, when they began to teach the women Torah, Gemara, okay, it was the Rav himself who gave the very first shiur to the women, implying that he felt, okay, that it was important for them to learn certain things. Okay. Anyway, Rabbi Yoshua Omer, he says, Rotze Isha and Bekav, right? Ubetiflut me'asak, right? Mitesha Kavin uprishut. Okay. All right. So Rabbi Yoshua here is saying that. Okay. Okay. Somebody help me out here. Okay. Rotze Isha, if the woman wants, okay. You got a small amount of food. Oh, right. Thank you, Abraham. Here's Rabbi Yoshua saying, what is a woman's preference? Okay, all right. I didn't write that in my notes here. Okay, is her preference a certain amount of food and intimacy? Okay, more than 9, a significant amount of food and separation. Okay, that's his view. Abstinence, right? Hu haya omer, and what did he say here as well? Chasid shoteh, that there are certain individuals who are who erode the world. Okay, who are they? Chasid shoteh, somebody who is punning a person who is a foolish person who appears to be righteous. V'rasha arum, a person who's wicked cunningly. V'isha prusha, and a woman who totally abstains from relations. Okay, and what happens? Umakot prushin hare elu mivale olam. Okay, and the person who brings sort of acts as in a ascetic manner falsely, these are the persons who erode the world. Okay, Gemara now. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel, Mishum Rabbi Meir, from the statement of Rabbi Meir. Kishayiti lomed Torah. And now we kind of come back to a little bit of Agadata here, but that's why I'm suggesting we're going to see the discussion of the copper sulfate is brought here, and that's what made me think of the question of what could make the water bitter. Okay, so Rabbi Meir is saying, "Kashaliti lo made eitzel Rabbi Akiva." But when I used to study Torah with Rabbi Akiva, hayiti matil kan tom l'toch hadio. I used to put copper sulfate, okay, or ferrous sulfate into the ink. V'lo amar li davar, and he never said anything. In other words, he didn't object. It would appear. Kashabati eitzel Rabbi Yishmael. When I came to Rabbi Yishmael to learn, Amarli, he said to me, Bani, ma malachtecha, my son, what is your profession? Amarti lo, I said to him, Lavlar ani, I'm a scribe. Amarli, he said to me, Bani, have zehir, shemalachtecha, melechet shamayim. My son, you should be careful because your work is the work of heaven, right? Shema tachzir ot echat, otatir ot echat. Perhaps you might lack a letter. In other words, you might miss a letter in your copying, or perhaps you might add a letter, okay, in your copying. What happens? Okay, nimtzeit ata machriv et kol ha'olam kulo. As a result, it's as if you would destroy the entire world, okay, by making such a mistake. Amarti lo, I said to him, davar echad yeshli shani matil b'toch hadio. There is one item that I do put inside the ink, v'kan kantom shmo, and it's called ferrous or copper sulfate. Amarli, and he says, right, v'chim matilain, okay, kan katom b'toch hadio, when you mix the ink, in other words, he puts gall nuts and certain other things in there. Okay, copper sulfate you put into it. HaTorah Amra, Umacha. But the Torah says, particularly in regards to the section of Sota, it must be able to be dissolved. Katav sheyuchal limchot, that it must be able to dissolve. And copper sulfate added to the ink is such that it helps retain and keep the ink there, okay? That's why sometimes if you look at an old Sefer Torah, you'll see that the ink is turned reddish instead of black, okay? So what happens? Ma'ika amarle, so what did he say to him? Uma'ika mahadele, and what did he respond to him, right? Hachika amarle, this is what he said to him. Lo mibaye b'chasirot v'yitero. Rabbi Meir was saying, I'm not worried, he said, about missing letters or adding letters, debaki ani, because I'm an expert. He had, I guess, a high opinion of himself, Rabbi Meir. Okay? Ela afilu lemechash lezvuv. Why, he says? Because even if there was a fly, and the fly would alight down on top of one of the letters, right? For example, the dilma ate viativ atage de dalit, that perhaps the fly might alight down and land on the tag, the extra piece of the dalit, right? And what would happen there? By doing so, it would remove some of the ink if it did so, right? Umachit le, it would remove part of the ink. Umashve le reish, and the result would be to look like a reish, okay? Which, right? Davar echad yeshli shani matil letoch hadio bekan kantom shmo. That's why when I add the copper sulfate to the ink, okay, and I write the letter, it's going to remain, it's going to stick, and that would not happen. Okay, Vahat Tanya, but aren't we taught elsewhere in a Braita? Amar Rabbi Meir, says Rabbi Meir, excuse me, Kashahayiti Lomed Torah Eitzel Rabbi Yishmael, that when I learned Torah by Rabbi Yishmael, Hayiti Matil Kan Kantom Letoch Hadio, I used to put copper sulfate into the ink, Velo Amarli Davar, and he didn't say anything. Kashabati Eitzel Rabbi Akiva, but when I came to learn by Rabbi Akiva, Asra Alai, he forbade me. If that's the case, says the Gemara, Kasha Shimush Ashimush, Kasha, right? Asrara Asra. We have a problem between the learning, I'll translate Shimush here as learning, okay, versus learning. In other words, the order of learning that Rabbi Meir said. In one case, he said he learned from Rabbi Akiva, then Rabbi Yishmael. In another case, he says he learned Rabbi Yishmael first, and then Rabbi Akiva. We also have a problem, says the Gemara, in who forbade him what? Okay.
One says
Rabbi Akiva. All right, says Rabbi was right. It was Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, so what happens, says the Gemara? Bishlema shimush ashimush lo kashi. Regarding the learning, we don't really have a problem. Why, says the Gemara? Me'ikara atalekame de Rabbi Akiva. That initially, Rabbi Meir started learning with Rabbi Akiva. Kevan de lo matze kam alibe, since it was such that Rabbi Akiva's style of learning was very more complicated in that he would present both the pros and the cons of an argument, that therefore Rabbi Meir had a hard time determining what was the actual halacha, okay? And therefore, what did he do? He went to a different yeshiva, okay? Not, by the way, that uncommon sometimes even in Eretz Yisrael today, I hear, okay? Atalekame de Rabbi Yishmael. And he went to, according to learn with Rabbi Yishmael, Vigamar. And therefore he then learned the exact halachas, okay? Once he learned the halachas, Gamar, Gamra, once he learned the halachas, what did he do? Hadar, Atalakami de Rabbi Akiva, Savara. Then he went back to learn by Rabbi Akiva, where that's where he learned the logical details and the explanation and argumentation, okay, of that case. Ella asra kasha, but what about the who said prohibited and who said prohibited? Isn't that the problem, right? Kasha, indeed, that's an issue. That's a problem. We don't know for sure, okay, which one, whether it was Rabbi Akiva or Rabbi Yishmael, who clearly was the one who wanted to prohibit Rabbi Meir from using the katom, the copper sulfate. Okay, time. Right? All right. Now notice, by the way, that tells us that there were different styles of learning in different yeshivas, number one. Okay. And that's understandable. I think I once told people that when I was a rabbi in St. Louis, we had lawyers and professors of law in the congregation. Some taught at Washington, WashU, and some taught at University of Missouri. And those people who studied at University of Missouri always passed the bar exam the very first time because they taught strictly the law as it was for the state of Missouri. At WashU, they taught law on a more theoretical basis. So those guys hardly ever passed the bar exam the first time, okay? And that's how I would gather, in a sense here too. Either you learn Gemara, you learn strictly the halacha, okay? Or a more detailed way was the savara, that you learn the argumentation and the logical process of what goes on in the Gemara, okay? All right, let's come back now. Tanya, a new bright. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says, Im Omer Haya Rabbi Meir, okay? That Rabbi Meir used to say, according to Rabbi Yehuda, L'kol matilin kan katom l'toch hadio. For all things, in other words, for writing not just the Sefer Torah, but for writing tefillin, okay, for writing the document for the sota. For all these things, he says, he thinks that Rabbi Meir felt it was viable to be able to put copper sulfate into the ink for the writing. But we just saw that the Gemara told us it has to be able to be dissolved, right? So what happens? Let's go on. Okay, Chutz, as we now go to the top of the Amud, mi parashat sota bilvad, with the exception of the section for the sota, because we understand that has to be dissolvable, exactly. Now, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Mishmo, and Rabbi Akiva says in his name, namely Rabbi Meir's name. Okay. Right. Okay. So what happens? Okay. So Rabbi Yaakov says in his name, Chutz mi parshat sota shel mikdash. No, he's clarifying. He's saying, no, it's only that section of sota when it's used specifically in the Beis HaMikdash to give the woman the exam. But when you write Parsha Sota in the Torah, in a normal situation, you could put the copper sulfate in. That's what he's saying. Okay? My Beinahu, what's the difference between the two of them? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, says Rabbi Yirmiyah, limchok la min haTorah. The difference is whether you could erase it from an actual scroll of the Torah. Okay, Ika Beinahu. That's the difference between them.
I agree.
Yes.
You know what makes me think about pashas for the Tochacha, which you read as silently as you can, just that the Tzibur could barely hear it.
Yeah.
So why isn't there anything created over here in such a Kriya?
Okay, Well, but there's no statement here. It's not an issue of Kriya here. It's an issue of the Ketiva.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
so here
it's
that's
going out to the island.
so that, but that's the point. The issue is it's got to be erasable. That's his point. Vahani Tnai, Kahani Tnai. And maybe we're going to say that this machloket is like an earlier machloket, the Tanya, as we learn elsewhere in a Braita. Ein Megilta Kshera Lahashkot. Okay, that in that case, okay, the scroll would not be valid to give her to drink. Ba sota acheret. Okay, regarding another sota, right? Rabbi Achai, in other words, that the fact that it is written for one woman and it gets erased guarantees, in a sense, that it cannot be used for another woman. Okay? And Rabbi Achai Bar Yeshaya Omer, he says, Megilta Kshera Lahashkot Basota Acher. He disagrees. Why? Because he's saying if you simply wrote it from the Sefer Torah, okay, it could be that it might still be usable for another woman. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa is going to come back and try to clarify. Dilma Lohi. Perhaps that's not the case. Ad kan lo ka'amar Tanakama hatam. Up to there, the Tanakama there didn't say Elakevan de intik l'shum Rachel. Okay, because there, maybe we say that when it's taken, it's for a particular woman. Rachel is just an example. Okay, it's not the actual name of the woman. For woman X, right? Lo hadra min taka l'shum leah. And therefore you're not able to take it again and use it for another woman, a second woman. Aval Torah. But if you were talking about using an actual Sefer Torah as your source for the Sota section, right? Distama ktiva hachinami demachkinan. Because there, okay, in its normal method of writing, there too, that would have to be able to be erased.
So we're saying that they're going to erase the letters of a Sefer Torah?
No, that's what they're saying. Okay, is that's why the one view was that it had that for the section of Sota used in the test of the woman there, that's why he's arguing that you couldn't use the copper sulfate because it would not be erasable. That's the point. Okay.
But isn't he saying that sometimes they will use that text?
But no, that's the whole point. That therefore you wouldn't use the text from a Sefer Torah.
We'd never use it.
Right. That you would have to write that section l'chatchila, okay, separately, and then erase it. Okay. Okay. Again, I would just parallel to the fact that the ketubah, just again, keep in mind, the ketubah you can have written all in advance and just, so to speak, fill in the blanks, but you can't do that for a get. All right? When you write the get, the entire text of the get has to be written lishma. Okay? And you can't do the same thing like you do with a ketubah, that you have a printed text and you just fill in the specifics. Okay? So I would compare it again, in a sense, somewhat like we said to the get in this case, lishma, okay, and again the whole text written specifically. Okay, Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, he says, Dilmalahi, perhaps that's not the case. Ad kan loka Amar Rabbi Achai Bar Yeshaya Hatam. Maybe up to that point, Rabbi, right? Achai Bar Rabbi Yeshaya said there, Ela b'Megillah de ichtov l'shum alut ba'olam. Maybe he was only talking about the situation of a Sefer Torah where you had all these other curses written in it, right? Aval Torah de hilehit lamed, okay, right? The ketiva, but rather a Torah which is normally written for the purpose of learning, okay? That's why it's written. Hachinami de lo mechakinan. Here also we say one is not able to erase it. Okay. V'Rebbi Achai bar Yeshai, litlei ktav legaresh et ishto v'nimlach. What about Rabbi, right? Rabbi Achai bar Yeshai. Are we saying that he does not hold that the writing of a get for a woman, okay, again, it has to be lishma and then can be reconsidered? Matsu ben Iro, right? What about the example that we find a text, a braita that tells us, right? Matsu ben Iro, someone found somebody else in his town. Va'amar lo, and he said to him, Shmi kishimcha, my name is like your name. V'shem ishti kashem ishtecha, and my wife's name is like your wife's name. Okay? We might think then he should be able to use X's get. Mr. Y should be able to use X's get if there is the parallel there.
The same names.
Same names, both men and women. Okay. Pasula gareshbo. We say that it is forbidden, invalid to divorce with that text. Is that? It's not the Shema. Exactly right, Ruben. Amre hatam. Why? Because it says there, vikatav la. It's written for her. Amar Rachmana. That's what's written in the Torah. Ba'inin ktiva lishma. Exactly. That we need it written for her sake. Hachanami. Here too, in regards to the sota, we have va'asa la. And it's done for her. Right? Ma'i asiya. What is it that we say that's done for her? Mechika. It's the erasing. It's the act of erasing that's done for her. Okay.
Which implies it has to be done for her. They have to know they're not erasing it.
Right, for this particular, but not the writing.
The one prepared for the sota, like the word in the Torah, the actual Torah itself is with almost like indelible ink. Right?
Almost.
That's
Right?
the copper sulfate.
Yeah.
The other one
is without it so that it could be erased. Right?
Well, like
I mean, if they have something that was written for one woman, and for some reason, whatever, it's still good, they can use it for another
So
woman.
theoretically, it would seem to imply, Zev, your question is correct. It would seem to imply that if it was written for one woman, okay, because remember her name is not in it, or things like that, okay, that therefore, and if she then admits her guilt, that they could still take that text.
The Gemara said before it's nignusa.
Okay.
It's hid.
But it depends on when she says it. That's the point. Okay.
Before the mechika.
Right. But that's before the mechika.
I mean, right. That's a machlokes. But I mean,
right. That's the point. That's the bottom line. If it's the erasing the Shema and not the writing, then you theoretically could use a earlier document for another woman or a sefer Torah. Right. Okay. All right. Let's go on. Okay. Eina maspeket right? Alishtos ad shepanema, right? We're saying that if she doesn't, that there wasn't enough, okay, to drink until she really didn't drink enough, and immediately it started acting, or started taking its effect, okay? So Mani, according to whom is that part of the Mishnah? Rabbi Shimon. It's got to be according to Rabbi Shimon, who says, Damar, makrivet mincha v'achar kach mashke, who argued before that they offer the mincha and then they give her to drink. The kama de lo karva minchata, that so long as they have not offered the mincha offering, lo badke lamaya, that the water is not going to examine her. Dichtiv, because it's written in the pasuk. Minchat zikaron maskeret avon. Citing another pasuk there in the same section, that the offering of the mincha is translated reminder, or it points to what the act of the sin. Okay, Amos Sefer. But I would say, look at the later on. Yesh la zechut. Our Mishnah then says immediately afterwards, if she has this merit, right? It would put it in abeyance. At the end, the Rabbanan. So that leads us to the view of the rabbis, right? Who said the opposite view. Okay, that it was drink then, right? Then mincha.
The Rabbanan hold that the source could be told. You'd be told in the source.
Okay. The Rabbi Shimon ha'amar. Because if it was Rabbi Shimon who said it, ein zechut toleh b'mayim hamarim. According to Rabbi Shimon, there is no merit that's going to put it into abeyance.
If she drinks it, it'll happen right away.
Right. Okay. Amar Rav Chisda Hamani. Says Rav Chisda, then according to whom? Rabbi Akiva. That's according to the view of Rabbi Akiva. The Amar who says, Makriv et minchata. So he holds like Rabbi Shimon in regards to the order of mincha and then drinking, but also ve'achar kach mashke, but ubezechut, but in regards to the question of merit, savar la karabanan. There he holds like the rabbis, that it's possible with the right merit, the punishment would be in abeyance. Okay, let's go on a bit more. Vehem omrim hotziuha, and the people said, take her out. My tama, what's the reasoning? The dilma meta, perhaps she's going to die. La memra, the mate asur b'machane levia. Does this come to tell us that a dead body is forbidden in the Levite camp? Remember, that was the second of the three camps in the Mishkan. Vahatanya, but aren't we taught elsewhere in a bright? Tamei mate, mutali kanes l'machane levia. That somebody who is tamei meis is permitted to enter the Levite camp, right? Velo tamei meis bilvad, and not simply an individual who has been impure because of contact with a mace. They say bilvad amru, ela afilu meis atzmo, but even a corpse itself. Shenamar, as it says, vayikach Moshe at atzmot Yosef imo, that the pasuk says that Moshe took the bones of Joseph with him. Where would he have taken it? Imo b'mechitzato. Okay, with him into his own boundary, into the area where he lived. Where did Moshe live? In the Levite camp, right? That's the point. Okay, going on. Amar Abaye.
Who says that bones? Who said that bones are common?
Oh yeah, bones are right. Right. Okay. Okay. Bones are tummy. Okay. So Abaye now is going to perhaps suggest an alternative reason why they wanted her to take the woman out. Right? Shema tifros nida. Maybe all of a sudden she's going to become a nida right there in front of everybody and start bleeding. La memra.
And a nida is
right. Right? Okay, so what happens? La memra, the beituta marpaya. Because maybe, but don't we usually say that fear suspends her period? And yes, okay, dichtiv, why? Because elsewhere, right?
Because it says about this chalchal.
Right. Why? Because the pasuk says, right, but it chalchal hamalka ma'od, right? Esther, right? Regarding Esther,
she was afraid.
She was afraid. Right?
Was Machna Levia the residence of the Levi?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So there were no women in the residence?
No, there were women there. They had,
Sure there
So a
were.
woman, could have a period at any time.
she had to go out the camp.
She has to go out of the camp.
She had to go out of that camp.
Out of Machne Bia into Machne Yisrael.
She had to go into Machane Yisrael, the third. Okay. V'titchalchel hamalka ma'on. V'amar Rav, says Rav, shapirsa nida. That implied that she had her period. V'ha'anantanan, and we teach, but don't we learn as follows? Charada misaleket damim, that fear suspends the blood. Pachda, okay, samit bi'ututa marapeya, okay, but fear really basically causes the womb to become more loose, right? Yesh la zechut haita v'chuli. Okay, so we go on. Mani matniden, then if they have zechut, according to whom is our Mishnah? Lo Abba Yossi ben Chanan, it can't be Rabbi Abba Yossi ben Chanan. Lo Rabbi Elazar ben Yitzchak, and not Ish Kfar Darom, and not from him either, right? V'lo Rabbi Yishmael, and it can't be by Rabbi Yishmael either. The Tanya, because we have a Braita that teaches Im Yesh La Zechut Tolela Shlosha Chodashim, because what somebody says in the Braita, if she has merit, it will put the results of the water in abeyance for 3 months. Kadei hakarat ha'ubar, in order to recognize if she is pregnant. Divrei Abba Yossi ben Chanan. That was his view. Second view, Rabbi Elazar ben Yitzchak, Ish Kfar Darom Omer. What does he say? Teisha chodashim. Okay, that it puts it in abeyance in 9 months. Right? As Zev's question was, Shene'amar v'nikta v'nizra'a zera, that she might become pregnant and have a progeny. Ulahalan hu omer, and later on he says, Zera ya'avdenu yisupar. Okay, in that case, again, he will point out that she'll serve and be related. Okay, so what happens? Right, so lissaper is yisupar. Okay, Zera hara'ui lissaper, that she will have progeny that is worthy to be spoken about, to tell stories about. In other words, born normal, and therefore they will say, "Oh, see, they'll see so and so. She had a child. That shows that she wasn't guilty of being unfaithful." Right? Rabbi Yishmael Omer, he says, "Shnei masar chodesh." No, it puts it in abeyance for an entire year. V'afal pi she'ein raya l'davar, and even though there's not a clear source, zecher l'davar, there is some kind of indication, some kind, right? Dichtiv, why? Because it says lahen malka malchei. Okay, so therefore it says what? Okay, going on from Daniel, Yishafer alayich v'chatayich b'tzedakah. Okay, that if you listen, king, he's saying this to Nebuchadnezzar. If you listen, king, and you behave according to my advice, okay, and what do? Yishapar alayich v'chatayich. You'll repent, or you'll improve from your sins, right? With kindness, with righteousness. Parok va'avitach b'mechan anin. Okay, you'll improve. What you'll do, you'll show mercy to the poor. All right, and then it just goes over a tiny bit to finish the quotation. Hein you archa l'shluchatayich. They're going to give you long life. Uchtiv, as it's written, kalom mate al Nebuchadnezzar malka, and thus came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. Right, we'll stop right there, and we'll pick up. What? Right, well, that's where it ends. No, then it goes on, and it's written, okay, Uchtiv l'kitzat yarchin trei asar, okay? Trei asar. And that's where it shows that his argument was that it would be 12 months of a ban. Right? So we'll pick up at the top of Kaf Aleph tomorrow.
All right.
Okay.
What is it saying then? There's no way that you could have a live birth.
The implication would be that if she's guilty,
So there's no way she could have a birth.
she's going to die eventually. Right, that's the point.